Baruch Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Avodah Zarah daf Tezayin, Avodah Zarah 16. We're going to start on the bottom of Tezvav Amabez, 4 lines from the bottom. Today's daf is dedicated for a shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzalah for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael. In this eighth Tzara, the daf yomi tells us, Tanu Rabbanan, in Mochrin Lahen Trisin. We just said you're not allowed to sell weapons to an idolater. Well, what about the case of where you want to sell Trisin? Trisin are shields. So this is not an offensive weapon, but a defensive weapon. Protect you against the arrows. So the Brisa says you cannot sell. And some say it's no problem to sell the shields to the idolaters. We're on the bottom of 15b. Some say it's no problem to sell the shields to the idolaters. So, trees in my time, and what's the reason why you would not be allowed to? If you want to say because it provides protection to the idolaters, well, if that's the case, even wheat and barley you shouldn't be allowed to sell because that provides nourishment. Excuse me. So Amar Rav Papa says, or it's Rav or Rav Papa, not clear. There's different girsas, but he says meaning to say the way Rashi understands this. Yes, if it would be possible to live life without selling food to the idolaters, great, but you can't live like that. So therefore, it's not possible. Tosfos gives a different explanation. He says efshar. It's impossible, hachanami, means it's impossible for us to be able to live in a world where we don't do business with the idolaters. So on the top of 16a, Amri Trisin, Haina Taimu Delo. Some say, what's the reason why we do not sell the shield? What's the reason? Shoim Zinayo, because when their weapons are finished, Katle Bigavayu, then they're going to use the shields as weapons. So that's why you can't sell it. V'yesh omrim mocham trisin, the kisham zinayu marek arki. And others say, no, you can sell them the shields because when their weapons are finished, then they're just going to run away. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Baravua, halacha ki yesh omrim. The law is like the yesh omrim who say you're allowed to sell the shields to the idolaters. And Amar Rav Ada Barava, okay, you could sell them shields, but ein mokrin lehen ashashios. We don't sell them ashashios shel barzel. These are thick pieces of metal that are called mashash. You don't sell them the ashashios of barzel. Why not? Why don't you sell them the ashashios of barzel? My timer. Mishum dechal sheminayo kli zayin. Boker Tov, how you doing, Moshe? Good morning to you. The reason why we don't sell them as shashos of barzel is because they can smelt them down or into make weapons. Around 6 Tezayin and Aleph, around 7 lines from the top. Now it says, well, if that's the case, if you're concerned about then turning the metal into weapons, well, then you shouldn't even be allowed to sell the hose or the shovels, the garden instruments, the garden tools, because you could always turn that into weapons as well. No, so when do we say that you can't sell the metal? That's a special type of metal that comes from the country called Hodu, which we today assume is India. That metal is specifically used for weapons. Now, and how come we sell today? Well, what do we sell today? Either the shields or the metal. How do we sell it? So, Amar Rav Ashi leparasai. The reason why we sell it is the reason why we sell it is to the Persians. We're only selling it to the Persians. The Meganu ilava. That the Persians, in those days, the Persians used to protect us. So we only sell to the Persians who are protecting us. Tosfos is writing, I mean, it's 12th and 13th centuries in northern France primarily. This is how come we sell weapons to the idolaters. So Tosfos, first of all, doesn't just limit it to shields, he limits it to everything. We sell them weapons because they provide protection for us. So the Jews were in the arms business back in the Middle Ages. We know that many medieval documents refer to Jews and other merchants, meaning to say it was there, or other money lenders. Jews were in the trade. So Agala Musiachim, you're not allowed to sell them calves or colts. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Matir B'Shvura said in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda allows you to sell an animal, a behema gasa, if it has a broken leg, because it's not going to be able to get healed and to live. Amrulo, so they said to him, but why? Okay, even though we cannot recover enough to live and work, we'd still be able to mate. Marbin olav yoledes. Giving the Marbin olav yoledes also a shehuye. So since they might keep it around, and because it can mate and have offspring, and so therefore they might come to leave it around, and people think it's permitted to sell an animal to an idolater, and so therefore it's prohibited. So the Gemara says, the keeping the Amar Lahan, Rabbi Yehuda says, L'kishateleid. He says, no, that's not our concern. Are you saying they're going to keep it around to have offspring? No, it doesn't. It's not able to mate. If it has a broken leg, it's not going to mate. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. So what are they debating, whether or not it's possible? No, they're not debating whether or not it's possible. They're debating whether or not the small possibility of it is enough to tell us that it's prohibited because people would see it. Does that possibility reach a threshold? Ben Beseira allows you to sell a horse. Why? Why did he allow you to sell a horse? Because Ben Beseira Matir Tanya Ben Beseira Matir Besusim Neshahu said, but Malachash and Chayav and Olachatas. What's the concern that you can't sell an animal? Because you have an obligation of Shvisas Behema. The animal can't work on Shabbos. But a horse didn't do work in those days. It was for riding, and riding was not a biblical prohibition, because if the horse would carry you on its back, it's not a biblical prohibition. The Rebbe Oser Mimnei Beis Devarim. Rebbe says, no, you can't sell a horse for two reasons. Echa Mishim Torah's Klizai, and one is it was a weapon, that they used the horse as a weapon to like kill people, right? Stampeding them. Echa Mishim Torah's Beimagasa, and also it's a Beimagasa, it's this large animal that you can't sell. So Bishlam Torah's Klizayin Ika Dekato B'Sichufe. I understand why we say it's a weapon, because there's some who kill with its sichufe, which is basically by kicking you. Ela Torah's Behemagasa, we're in the middle of Ted Zayin Amanal 16a, in the middle of the page. Ela Torah's Behemagasa Mahi. Why do we say that it's the law of a working animal? It's not going to work. It's a horse. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan. No, a horse works. When it gets older and stops being a riding horse, then they turn it into a work horse, and it grinds. It's grinding the grain at the millstone. I'm Rabbi Yochanan halacha ben Beseira. Rabbi Yochanan says laws like ben Beseira, who allowed you to sell a horse to an idolater. The next question is shor shal patem mahu. Let's say this was an ox that you fattened up. Clearly, you fattened up in order to slaughter it. So, are you allowed to sell that to an idolater? Mar says Tibailo Rabbi Yehuda, Tibailo Rabbanan. So it's a question on Rabbi Yehuda allows you to sell an animal with a broken leg, and it's a question against the Rabbanan who don't allow you to sell an animal with a broken leg. Tibailo Rabbi Yehuda, Adkan Lokashay Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda allow you to sell bishvura to asil kol malacha? Because the shvura animal will never work again if it has a broken leg. But this animal, if you keep around, you could put it on a diet and then it will be able to work again. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda would say it's Asur, or Dilma perhaps, Afilu Rabbanan, or even according to Rabbanan, we say it's Asur. Why do they prohibit the animal there? Because as a general rule, an animal is not meant for slaughtering, and even if it has a broken leg, it's going to be used for mating. But in this case, maybe since the animal is clearly meant for being slaughtered and not being left to keep around, so therefore the rabbis would allow it. So Tashma, how do we answer this? Shall base Revi, are you makrivin shor shall petam biyom edam? So this is a very interesting situation that in the house of Rebbe, they would bring makrivin shor shal petam biyom. They would take an offering of this ox that was supposed to be fattened up on the holidays of the idolaters. So basically, what it sounds like, Rashi says, avodos bizayonai. So they had to pay a tribute to the idolaters. They had to send the idolaters this fattened up ox. So what happened? Chiser dalad ravavin she'em makriven oso hayom el hamachar. So first, Rebbe paid $40,000 to, or 40,000 coins, so that they don't have to make this, send this animal to them on the day of the festival, but they could do it the next day. And so therefore, he diminished a little the decree. Then, Chiser Dalad Revavin, Shema Kriven Osochai El Shochet. So then he sent another Dalad Revavin that they don't have to send a living animal, but a dead animal. And then Chiser Dalad Revavin, and then he sent another Dalad Revavin, Shema Kriven Osokol Iker, that they don't have to bring it at all. So now the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reasoning that Rabbi, what's the reasoning that Rabbi didn't want to send the animal, even though it was going to be slaughtered? Isn't it because that maybe they would keep it around? And we see from here that even though, Boker Tov, Harold, that even though this was an ox that was meant to be slaughtered, Rabbi didn't want to keep it around. And so it's not allowed to sell them, even an ox that's supposed to be slaughtered. The Gemara says, no, that's not the reasoning. The Gemara says, no. According to your logic, according to your logic, why did Rebbe say, oh, we want them to not bring it today, but only tomorrow? What's the logic there? If you say it's not allowed. Ella, so Rebbe Miyaker Milsa Bai. Rebbe wanted to get rid of the whole thing. He didn't want to send them even the fatted animal even once. And Bai the Savar, and so he had the logic, Yaker Va'asi Porta Porta. He said, okay, Rebbe was very shrewd in a good way. He had a shrewd understanding of the idolaters, and he said, if we try to do it all at once, it won't work. So therefore, we'll try to get rid of it little by little. And so therefore he says, I'll get rid of it little by little. And so therefore, So then the Gemara asks the question, but wait, your concern is that if you have the animal that's fattened, and if you leave it there, then it'll get better, it'll lose all its weight, and then it'll be able to do work again? Is that really the way it works? You could put a cow on a diet, and you put the ox on a diet. So I mean to say, is it really capable of getting better so that we have to prohibit it? The Gemara says, Amar Rav Ashi, Amar Zvida. Zvida was a person whose job was to fatten up the oxen. He said, yeah, Bar Tura Meshahinan Le Va'avid Al-Chad Train. That if you have this ox that you fattened up, you basically keep it around and put it on a very lean diet, and then it'll actually be able to work like two oxen. and it'll be able do double the work. Okay. Next Mishnah. Ein mokrin lahem duvin v'arayos. You're not allowed to sell on the bottom of 16a at the Mishnah. You're not allowed to sell bears and lions to idolaters. V'kol davar sheyesh bo nezek l'rabim. Anything that does damage to the world, you can't. We don't trust them, and if you give them bears and lions, they'll do damage. Ein bonin imayim, and also you're not allowed to build for them. Basilki, gardom, itzdaida, ubima. That you're not allowed to build these things. These were items where they were doing things which were bad. Rashi says the Itztida is the place where they were basically they did what's it called, bullfighting, and they had an ox that would gore and kill people, and everybody had a big laugh about it. So you can't build that; it's a disgusting thing. And a gardom is where they judged. That was their place where they judged people to death, and the bima, that was like a place where they used to throw people off of it and kill them. And everything was a nezek or rabim, Rashi says. And we don't want the Jewish people to do it because you can end up killing Jews that way. So therefore, you're not allowed to build it. Also, it's a nezek or rabim, Rashi said. The Mishnah says it's a damage for everybody. And so the basilki, we'll see in the Gemara, is really an overarching term that applies to these things. Avobonim imayim, but you are allowed to build for them bimosios ubeis merchotzios. You're allowed to build for them this bimosios, which was a building that they used, but they didn't directly use it for the idolatry. It was basically it was this building which, generally speaking, had the idolatry. Meaning to say, it wasn't directly the idolatry, but it was like an accessory to an accessory of the idolatry. So therefore, it was allowed. And also their bathhouses. But Higil Akipa, when they reached the part which was like the dome, Shemamidim Ba'avodas Kochavim, where they placed their idols on, Asr Livnos, then you weren't allowed to build it. Comes along the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanin bar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav Amar Rav. So we say you can't sell a bear and a lion because it's going to do damage. So first of all, we have a statement that Rav Chanan bar Rava said in the name of Rav, or Rav Chanan bar Rav Chisda in the name of Rav, Chaya Gasa Harei Kebehema Dakal Apirkus. Now the Chaya Gasa, a large wild animal, undomesticated animal, let's say like a deer, is like a behema daka, like a small animal, like a sheep or a goat with respect to pirkus. Pirkus is after an animal dies, it goes through something called a death rattle. If you ever see an animal die, it shakes. So if it's a behema daka, we need it to shake in order to make sure that it's not a treifa and it's kosher. A behema daka sticks out, it has to stick out its leg and bring it back. Whereas a behema gasa just has to stick out the leg in one direction. So the Chaya Gasa is like the Behema Daka with respect to the requirements of Pirkus, of Volola Mechira, but not for sale. Meaning to say, you could sell a Behema Daka, but you can't sell a Behema Gasa. So the Chaya Gasa is something that you're not allowed to sell. V'ani Omer Afla Mechira, and I say, says this statement in the name of Rav, that you're even allowed to sell it. Malcolm Shinago Limkor Mokran, Shalom Kor Mokran. I say it's like a behema daka that you could sell. So the Chaya Gasa you could sell according to Rav Chanan, but according to Rav Chanan bar Rav or Rav Chanin bar Rav, but not according to Rav. Tanan, so the Gemara challenges this, is a Mokran Lam Dov in Mokran and Dov and Viarayos. You're not allowed to sell bears and lions, but we'll call davar sheyesh bo nezek l'rabim. You can't sell anything that does damage. Time of the east bay nezek l'rabim. So what's the reason why you can't sell it? It's because it's going to do damage. Halais bay nezek l'rabim. But if it wouldn't be something that does damage, it would be permitted. So why does Rav say you can't sell it? We see that you're only not allowed to sell it if it's something that does damage, but if it's something that's domesticated or like a chayagasa that's not dangerous, you're allowed to sell it. So I'm a Rabba Bar Ula Ba'ari Shavar. When does our Mishnah say? When does our Mishnah say that you're allowed to sell a lion? That's only in a case if the lion is a broken leg. And that's a liba to Rabbi Yehuda, who says the concern is about working. And so since this lion has a broken leg, it's not capable of working. We're on the top of Tezayin Amabeis. Rav Ashi Amar, no, a lion can never work. Stam Ari Shavar Hu Eitz Malacha. You don't even need to say it's a broken leg. A lion can't work. A lion has a broken leg in the sense that it's never able to work. So Meisvei, so we challenge this from the Brisa. What does the Brisa say? Kashem shem mochrin lehem beimagasa, kach ein mochrin lehem chayagasa. You're not allowed to sell a chayagasa. So this is not a question on Rav. This is a question on Rav Chanan Barabba, who said that you could sell it because of this Brisa says you don't sell. Even a place where you sell it, you can't sell. Well, I'll say it again. You have to do Rav Chanan Barabba. So it's a deed of refutation because you see you cannot sell a chayagasa. Tiyufta. Ravina basically gets the same place, but he has a different version of how he got there. Ravina Rami Masnisina Brisa. He threw the Mishnah against the Brisa Mashani. So and then he dovetailed them. So it says Tanan ein mochrin and dovim v'arayos. The Mishnah says you can't sell bears or lions. We'll call davar sheish bo nezek l'rabim, or anything that does damage. Time of these by nezek, because it does damage. Well, he's by nezek mochrin, but if it doesn't damage, you could sell it. There are many. What about our brisa? Kashem shem mochrin be'emagasa, kach ein mochrin chayagasa. Bil b'mochrim shem mochrin be'emadaka. Chayagasa ein mochrin. You don't sell chayagasas, but from our Mishnah it says you can. Mishani ba'ari shavor. So when are you allowed to sell it? Only according to Rabbi Yehuda, it says it's a broken lion. No, every lion is broken. So you don't have to say it's like. So you don't have to say it's a specifically broken lion. So Maskeflar of Nachman, he raised another point. How do you know that this Ari is considered a Chayagasa? It's considered a large animal, even though it's a dangerous animal. It doesn't mean it's large. Maybe it's not referred to in that price because it may be a lion is a small animal. Especially I don't think they're referring to like the lions you see in Africa. They're maybe referring to like mountain lions, a little like larger than a cat. Still dangerous, but not as large animal. Rav Ashi has the same idea, but he gets there differently. Rav Ashi diek masnisin umosif tiyufta. He basically made an inference from our Mishnah, and then he brought out refutation. And now in a mochrin land dovim v'arayis local davar sheish bo nezek l'rabim says in our Mishnah you can't sell them. Why? Time of the isbei nezek halei isbei nezek mochrin. But so if there's no damage, you can. But time of Ari, this time Ari shavar. Why can you sell a lion? Because it is assuming it's mostly like a broken leg. It can't do any work. So to Tiyufta to Rav Chanan Barabba. So this is the reputation of Chanan Barabba Tiyufta, who said that you could sell a lion chayagas if it was domesticated. So Tiyufta to Rav Chanan Barabba Tiyufta. The chayagas mias my malacha. So the Gemara says, well, one second. Generally speaking, what kind of work can a wild animal do? A large animal. So the Gemara says, that you can use like a wild donkey and tie it up and it'll grind the mill in the millstone because it'll just move around and it'll grind. Amar Rabbi Zera, ki avina be Rabbi Yehuda. When I was studying with Rabbi Yehuda was in Babel, Rabbi Zera was there, but then he went up to Eretz Yisrael. He says, so when I was studying with Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Gemiro Minai, Ha Milsa, Demigava Rabba Shmili. He said, I once was taught to me something from something that was taught by a great man. I don't know if I learned it from Rav Shmuel. What was the matter that was taught? I learned that a chayagasa, this large animal, is like a behema dakla perkos, meaning to say it needs to stick out its limb in both directions in order to be considered kosher. When I came to Korkanai, This is a place that's not usually cited in the Talmud. Ashka Cheo Rav Chia bar Ashi, the Yosef, the Kamar Mishmei the Shmuel. So Rav Chia bar Ashi was sitting there, and he said it in the name of Shmuel. Amina Shmamina Mishmei the Shmuel. So I said, okay, it must be that was taught by Shmuel. He also said with Surah. When I came to Surah, I heard Ashkei Rabba bar Yirmiyah. So I heard from Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Yosef Kamar Mishmei the Rab. And he said this in the teaching the same name of Rav. So I see from here that Rav Chia bar Ashi is teaching in the name of Shmuel, and Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba is teaching it in the name of, Rabba bar Yirmiyah is teaching in the name of Rav. So Kisalito Hasam. But then I went up to Eretz Yisrael. He was sitting there. He said, "Amar Rav Chama bar Guria, Mishmei de Rav." That this was Rav Chama bar Guria in the name of Rav. So that was taught in the name of Rav, but this time was taught by Rav Chama bar Guria. So I said. So at that point, I said. Amri below several Amar Deman Mara Deshmaita Rabba Bar Yirmiyah. So I said to him, didn't you follow the teaching? Who's the one who said this in the name of Rav? Was not Rav Chama Bar Gurmiyah, Rav Chama Bar Gurmiyah, Rav Bar Yirmiyah. Amri Patya Ukma. He called him basically Rashi says a black pot, because meaning to say you're always studying Torah. Rashi says. Between the two of us, we're going to get it right. Thank you for correcting me. Is like a small animal expected pyrrhus. Just start the next story. There are three basilicas of the idolaters. There are three things that you build that are called basilicas for the idolaters, for the kings, for the idolaters. Their palaces, their bathhouses, the storage houses. You can do two of them, but the one for the kings you can't do. The way to remember that is you can't. That's a pasuk which we say every day from Tehillim. In the Halukas, and that is not something, but we make a pun that you can't build it for the palace. Ikadamri, you can't build the king's palace. Ikadamri, Amarava, Kulam Waheter. You can do all of them. Mar says, how Silvatan, Aim Boni, Mine Basilki, Gardamitida, Ubima. But didn't we just say you can't do it in the Mishnah? So Mar says, Aima Shel Gardom, the Shel Estida, the Shel Bima. That you can't build a basilica if it's of a gardom, it's died or bima, because that's causing Jews to die in those things. Okay, I want to just say before we stop that I know that not everybody is here for Shabbos, so I encourage you to do the daf with me afterwards, or even to do it on your own if you can, because the daf Yud Zayin is some of the most incredible Agadata, most famous Agadata in the whole Talmud. It'll be a shame if you missed it. Also daf Yud Ches as well. So I want to say before we stop and hang up the phone, we want to say to